Sunday, Erev Rosh Chodesh Menachem of Tavshin Daled. We are in Teres Menachem, Sefer Mamar Tavshin Daled, Tavshin Beis. In the Mamar of Yom Beis, the Chag Shavuos, Tavshin Yud Beis, and we are on page Shehikdimu. Okay. And we are on page Shehikdimu 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top. The line starts with the words Gemilus. We're at the full stop by the word V'ha'inyan. The Rebbe asked why, when the Jewish people declared Naaseh before Nishma, we will do, they said we will do, before they said we will hear, they received 2 crowns. Why wasn't there a 3rd crown for saying Naaseh before Nishma? The Rebbe explained that indeed there was a 3rd crown, but that 3rd crown Hashem kept for himself. What's the idea of crowns? 2 crowns, 3 crowns. What's this whole idea of crowns in any event? What's the whole concept of these crowns? So the Rebbe began by explaining the idea of the relationship between the creation of the world and Matan Torah. On the 6th day of creation, it says, "Vahi erev vahi boker yom hashishi." Unlike all the other days where it says Echad, vahi erev vahi boker yom Echad yom Sheni, it doesn't say Yom HaEchad yom HaSheni, right? Why the extra Hey Hashishi, the 6th day? And as Harris pointed out, the Hey Hayediyah, which means it's a famous 6th day. What are we referring to? So our sages teach us that it refers to the famous 6th day indeed, which is the 6th day of Sivan, the month of Sivan, on which the Torah was given. Because Hashem made a condition with the with creation, and He said if He made creation contingent on the Jewish people accepting the Torah. If the Jewish people accept the Torah, then the world will continue to exist, and conversely, the opposite. So on the 6th day of creation, when the Yidden received the Torah and accepted the Torah, that brought shleimus, that brought completeness into the creation. Which means to say that until the Torah was given, the world didn't have true existence. It wasn't really truly existence, it was conditional existence. So we see from here, that the existence of the world depends on Torah. In more detail, says the Rebbe, the existence of the world depends on 3 pillars. Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, like the Mishnah in Avos, Perek Aleph. Al Shloisha Dvarim Ha'olam Eimeh, the world stands on 3 things: on Torah, on service, and on active kindness. What's this idea of the Torah, of the world standing on these 3 pillars? That's where we're up to. What is the idea? The main existence of the world is specifically through makifim, meaning through the transcendental elements of godliness. We spoke about this quite at length in the last shiur, right? Explaining what is the idea of makifim. That in Seder Shtalshlus we have this idea of igulim and yosher, right? We have the 10 divine attributes in each realm, which gives the internal or the immanent life to all of existence in that particular sphere. But then you also have the makifim, the transcendental aspects of God's infinite light, energy, which you have as a totality, transcending all of creation, surrounding, so to speak, all of creation, all of the entirety. Not only, I'm not talking about only physical. We're talking about way back all the way to the beginning of everything, to the root of everything. And then in each and every realm, you also have its particular makif, its particular transcendental divine energy. So the Rebbe says, the main existence of the world is specifically through the makifim. You have from the transcendental aspects of Ein Sof, of godliness. And the Rebbe gives a parable from the human being, just like it is concerning the person. The main existence of the person is from what? From the transcendental elements of the soul. In other words, what gives the person life? Which aspects of the soul? We know the soul. In the soul, you have nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. Right? You have the 5 levels or the 5 names with which the soul is called, referred to. In other words, the 5 levels of the soul. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama being the pnimius dika, the immanent elements of the soul that clothe itself within the human being to allow it to function. The action to allow the person to act, to speak, to think, to feel, to perceive. Right? So those are the internal elements of the soul that function, that unite with the body. But where does the person's existence come from? How does the person live? That's from the etzem nefesh. That's from the etzem neshama, right? From the very essence of the soul, which does not clothe itself within the body. It's makif. It remains hovering and transcendental to the consciousness of the person. So just like concerning the person, his main existence is from the makif of the neshama, from the transcendental elements of the soul. This is the meaning of what we say in Birchas HaShachar. Neshama, in the bracha of the kind of neshama shenasatabi, right? We say neshama, the soul which you have given to us, tahirahi is pure. Ata, but also you created it. Ata yitzarta, you formed it. Vata nafachtabi, and you blew it into me. Sheim pratim adregis to say the rishtal. These are the detailed levels of the chain order of creation, as we learned previously. Tahira is atzilus, berasa is bria, yitzarta is yitzira, and afachta is asiya. So it goes in descending order, talking about the soul coming from the realm of atzilus all the way down to Asiya into the body. But then we conclude and we say, V'ata, I'm sorry. So all these 4 levels are a reference to what? To the pnimius, to the immanent elements of the soul. But after that we conclude and we say, V'ata meshamra b'kir bi, and you keep the soul within me. I'm sorry, shehu b'chinas makif, which is the makif, the transcendental element of the soul. Shal yodihu ikir, through which is the main existence of the soul. So just like it is concerning the human being and his body, similarly, when we talk about the world, which is referred to as a big body, in other words, the human being is a metaphor for the world, and the world corresponds to all the elements that we find in the body. So just like it concerning in the small world, meaning the human being, the main existence of the human being is from the makif, from the transcendental elements of its life force. So too it's concerning the world. The main existence of the world is from the transcendental elements of godliness. You have the immanent elements of godliness, the chayas of the key, the godly energy that clothes itself with pnimius, clothes itself internally within the world, and relates to each aspect of existence in its specific character. But then you have the makif element, the general life force, which causes the world. That's the main element that causes the world to exist. So that's generally, we say that that the main existence of the world, the main life energy of the world, is from this transcendental element of godliness. But in detail, when you want to dissect it even further, generally there are 3 makifim. Concerning the world, there are what? 3 makifim, 3 transcendental aspects in the godly life force that is mainly responsible for the existence of the world. In more detail, the existence of the world is through the 3 makifim, through the 3 transcendental aspects of God's divine energy. Which 3 makifim, which 3 of these transcendental elements? They are referred to as Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Torah, service, and acts of kindness, as the Rebbe will explain.
We just said there were 4 for the soul.
No, we did not.
4 rows.
We said for the soul there were 4.
So to speak. We said so to speak. We said that
that's not makif, that's pnimi.
Asiya?
That's a reference to the pnimius. That the soul, the pnimius aspect, the journey of the soul, the pnimius element of the soul, goes through Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. But then we say Va'ata Meshamra Bekirbi. Va'ata Meshamra is the makif, is the etzem nefesh. Right? Similarly, in the world, you also have the pnimius, the chayas of the key, which clothes itself, the godly energy that clothes itself internally within the world, right? The heat of fire, the coldness, the porousness of water, etc., which relates to a godly energy which is designed and relates to those particular pneumistic aspects of each aspect of existence. But then you have the makif, the highest
So
kloli
there's
is
one makif, which is
Atam Shamra.
But now we're saying the three makifim.
The world also has a makif, but it's got three strands, as it were. Three strands. The Rebbe does not explain, doesn't go into detail here in the different strands concerning the human being. But concerning the world, the Rebbe, because we're focusing now on the idea of the three ksorim that we received in Matan Torah, so the Rebbe explains that the makif of the world has three strands to it. What are they? Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. This is also the content of the idea. In other words, this is the meaning of these three crowns that were given at Matan Torah. What's a crown? A crown surrounds the head. It means, in other words, it's makif, right? In spiritual sense, it's the idea of something that's transcendental. What's the relationship to the giving of the Torah? Shehem gimel makifim. These are the three hovering and transcendental elements of godliness. Because the idea of a crown is something that surrounds. Through which, because through them is affected existence of the world. At Matan Torah, these three strands of makif were activated, and that gave true existence to the world, which wasn't until then, because until then it was conditional. What's going on over here? What's makif? What's pnimi? What's all this? So now the Rebbe begins to explain, say the Hishtalshalos, chapter 3. In order to understand this, we first need to preface how you do that which is known. That the general idea of the creation of the worlds, in other words, the operating system of the creation, is called with the name Hishtalshalos. What does the word Hishtalshalos mean? So the Rebbe says, Shumiloshen Shalshelis. Hishtalshalos comes from the expression of Shalshelis, a chain link. Or rather, a link chain. A chain made out of links. Kamei HaShalshelis, just like a chain, Huasuya Mikamat HaBois, which is made from a number of rings. Ha'achuzois Zubezu. Links that are held on one to another. They're linked in one to another. Imagine if the chain is going down, hanging down, from up, down, from above to below. So how does it work? The end of the upper link enters into the head of the lower link. The lower ring. Right? So the bottom of the upper ring is attached to the top of the lower ring. So too, as you go along with the next ring, and so it goes from ring to ring, that the top part of the upper ring is connected to the bottom part of the upper ring is connected to the bottom part of the upper ring is connected to the top part of the lower ring, and that's how it continues on and on and on. But it's not only that the bottom part of the top ring is attached to the top part of the bottom ring, it works the other way around too. That the top part of the bottom ring is connected, hangs on the bottom part of the top ring. So to the ring above it is connected to the one above it in the same manner, etc., etc. What's the idea? Moving from this is understood. From this is understood that all the rings in this chain link chain, are tied and connected one to another. Right? In other words, not only each ring that's connected to the one below it or above it, but even the rings that are not connected, in other words, the very top one and the very bottom one, are also related to one another. By virtue of the fact that it's connected to a ring, which is connected to a ring, which is connected to a ring, that's ultimately connected to the top ring. To the extent that even the lowest ring is tied and connected to the very highest ring. For although when you come to the very bottom ring, the bottom of the bottom ring is not connected to anything. Right? And it's not connected, the bottom of the bottom ring is not connected to the ring above it. It's only the top part of the bottom ring that's connected to the ring that's above it. It's only its head that's connected to the ring above it. Nevertheless, you're talking about the head and the end of one ring, of the same ring. Ubemele, and therefore, shayich gam soifer shel hatabas hatachtoina letabas shel hamayla mimena. Because of that, the end of the bottom ring, although not connected directly to the ring above it, it's still related to and connected to the ring above it by virtue of its head, because it's the bottom of the same ring. And in this manner, it's also connected to the very top ring. The bottom part of the bottom ring is connected to the top of the very top ring. So too, the very highest ring is connected, is relates to the ring just below it. To the extent that the top ring is also related to what? To the very lowest ring. And, as the Rebbe said, even to the bottom part of the very lowest ring. For although, again, he repeats the same thing in the reverse order, although the head of the highest ring does not hold and is not connected to the ring that's below it, it's only the bottom of the top ring that is connected to the ring below it. It's the head and the end of the same ring. And because of that, the head of the highest ring has a relationship, is connected through that to the ring below it. To the extent that it's also connected through this process to the very lowest ring and to the bottom of the very lowest ring, even though the top of the top ring and the bottom of the bottom ring are not directly connected to one another. What is this metaphor of Seder Hishtalshalus, the chain order of creation? This is a parable for the creation of the world, which is called the chain order. This means to say that all the realms in the chain order of creation have a connection one to another. The highest level of Seder Shtalshalus to the very lowest level of Seder Shtalshalus have a connection one to another. But now we also know that there are levels of godliness that are beyond Seder Shtalshalus. There's the Ein Sof, God's infinite light, the Makifim, right, as it were, that are beyond the chain order of creation. When we refer to, however, when we talk about the modes, the aspects that are beyond the chain order of creation, the created beings and the emanated beings, in other words, from Bria and down, is created beings. Atzilus is godliness, but over there you don't have creatures. You have emanated beings. Ne'etzolim. It's a higher level. There are no angels in the world of Atzilus, right? Even the souls that are in Atzilus are in a form of Ne'etzolim. They're in a form of emanated beings from godliness, which is in a completely different category than created beings. But nevertheless, when we talk about, because they're all within Seder Shtalshalus, the relationship between them, in other words, between the emanated beings and the created beings, relative to the aspects that are beyond the chain order of creation, is infinite. There's no relationship whatsoever. It's quantum. You can't say the same thing as we said before, that you go from one link to another link to another link, and ultimately you reach the top. No, there's a massive, massive gap. Why? For it's known that there is no relationship whatsoever, relative relationship whatsoever, between emanated beings to the very essence of God's infinite light. Why? We'll explain in a minute. And in what way is there no relationship, no relative relationship? First of all, I want to preface something. When we talk about bleak wool, things that are vastly different from one another, to the extent that there's no relative relationship between them, there are levels. There's levels in bleak wool also. For example, the number 1 relative to the big, to 100 billion, even though there's a vast gap, but there's a relationship, because 100 billion is made up of 100 billion number ones. The number 1 to infinite numbers is bleak wool. There's no relative relationship. You won't get. There's a gap, right? So that's bleak wool. But then you have even a higher bleak wool. The number 1 relative to Chochmah Atzilus, for example. That's a greater bleak wool, a greater inarech, a greater non-relative relationship. You following what I'm saying? So in other words, because numbers are still within the same world, they're within the same brackets. Even though you have number one and you have infinite numbers, and there's this non-relative relationship between one and infinity, but they're still within the same realm of numbers. But then if you take number one relative to Chachma Atzilis, they're in completely different. The non-relative relationship is in two aspects. A, you won't from one to Chachma Atzilis. There's no relationship between the two, a number and Chachma Atzilis. And B, they're in different brackets altogether. Are you with me?
Infinity is infinity.
I'm talking about infinite numbers. Infinite numbers specifically. I'm not talking about infinity at Loli. Infinite numbers.
That means it's infinity.
Infinite numbers.
You're talking about.
All right.
So therefore he says like this. It is known that there is no relative relationship between the emanated beings to the very essence of Hashem. The Yesur Mishen Arei Chasil Gab Atzilus, the great as the relative relationship between Asiya, the lowest of the four realms, relative to Atzilus, is Be'en Arech, there's no relative relationship. Ein Arech Atzilus L'Gab Ein Sof. The non-relative relationship between Atzilus, the highest of the four realms, relative to Hashem's very essence, is even greater. Which means this means that even though within Seder Shtalshalos there's no relative relationship between Asiya, the lowest of the four realms, relative to the highest of the four realms, nevertheless, being that they are all within the chain order of creation, they are related one to another in the sense that they are within the same bracket, within the chain order of creation. Within that, Asiya, relative to Atzilus, is there's no relative relationship between them. Which means the common denominator between them is that they are all either created beings or emanated beings. In other words, they're all part of the same operating system. But relative to Ein Sof, God's infinite light, the emanator, relative to him, even the realm of Atzilus has no relative relationship to him at all. To what extent? To the extent that relative to the Matzil, to the emanator, to God's infinite light, which is beyond the Shtalshalos, right? Atzilus and Asiya are equally insignificant.
It's like when you're on a plane, small building and a big building, the same. And you write it out.
Yes, well, that's also still within Seder Shtalshalos. It's even greater than that. Ein erech klal klal. They're still meaningful in the sense that they're buildings, right? Here, Atzilus and Asiya are so meaningless that it doesn't matter if Atzilus, if it's Asiya, it's a different reality altogether. Continue with Shem tomorrow.